My name is Shraddha Pathak and I will be co-moderating this session. Starting, I would like to talk about the theme. India's 6% of GDP investment in education isn't just a policy target. It's a blueprint for India's unbreakable human capital revolution. With this, I would like to introduce my speaker, Abhinandan Kaul, a dynamic voice, youth, speaker, blogger, and actor, entrepreneur. Please, Abhinandan, I would like you to take over.
Yeah, thank you, Shraddha, for the introduction. My name is Abhinandan Kaul, and I'm a first-year law student at the Faculty of Law, University of Delhi. And right now, I'm also serving as the media president for the Delhi University Students' Union, apart from some things that Shraddha had mentioned. So before I begin, I'd like to sincerely thank sarkarischool.in and the We Citizens Foundation for convening this youth summit on children in the Union Budget 2026, because this is a very critical discussion, since we are a young nation, and the youth has a lot of energy. It's very essential to sort of imbibe the real skills, proper values within the youth, so that the youth energies are channelized in such a way that we can achieve the goal of becoming a developed nation, a Viksit Bharat by 2047. So I would like to start off, with a quote from the Upanishads, which reads, "Knowledge is what liberates." So why did I start with this quote? Is because I want to talk a little bit about ancient India before we come to the modern part. So in classical Indian thought in ancient India, education was not just merely a form of instruction. It was seen as a component of statecraft. For example, Kautilya in the Arthashastra, he placed training and disciplined learning at the heart of governance. And institutions like Nalanda and Takshila, which many of us would know, they were not just accidental achievements. They were sort of products of sustained patronage, of sustained policy foresight. So knowledge was at that point of time seen as strategic capital. And even in modern economies, we use a different term, but for the same insight. And that term is human capital formation. So today the question before us and the topic that I'll be speaking on is very precise and very measurable, and that is whether the current budgetary allocations in our nation is genuinely moving us towards the the national education policies 6% target of spending of the GDP on education, and what does this trajectory imply for our nation's future in human capital formation, and with respect to all of the connected aspects. So as we know, this benchmark had been set up in 2020 that we should try to spend 6% of the GDP on education. And in the union budget of 2026 and 27, as one of the speakers earlier had also pointed out when the sessions had started, that the allocation has increased to about 1.39 lakh crore. This is a notable rise from last year, and school education, higher education, both have received incremental enhancements, including funding for digital infrastructure, AI skilling initiatives, and institutional strengthening. So in nominal terms, the spending is definitely rising. However, when we measure it relative to the GDP, the expenditure on education, it continues to remain, in the band of approximately 2.5 to 3% at the union level. And when we take the states together, it's around 4 to 4.5%. So it's very, very short as compared to the 6% benchmark that we have envisioned under the NEP. And this distinction is very critical because absolute increases, as we can see, is coexisting with relative stagnation. So if the GDP expands faster than the education expenditure, the share does not structurally shift. And structural shifts are what human capital transformation actually require. Now, when we talk about the 6% benchmark, it's not something that's symbolic, that it's just set up under the policy. It sort of emerged back in 1966. It was a recommendation of the Kothari Commission, and that commission argued that educational investment, it must be proportional to developmental ambition as well. And empirical evidence also supports it. As I said, it's not symbolic. So countries which have sustained their public education spending to around 5 to 6% of their GDP during their developmental transitions, countries like South Korea, Finland, Israel, and so on, they've experienced a rapid gain in productivity, in technological capability, and even in income levels. And why does this happen? This happens because education spending, it sort of directly influences things like labor productivity, innovation output, and social mobility, institutional quality, and even democratic participation, critical for a nation like India. So the World Bank also has, consistently estimated that each additional year of schooling, it increases individual earnings by around 8 to 10%. And at the macro level, higher educational attainment, it correlates strongly with long-term GDP growth rates. And for India, a nation which is aspiring towards, the developed nation status by 2047, this gap between 4% and 6%, it's not a very marginal gap. It represents tens and thousands of crores annually in potential human capital investment. Now, let's talk more about the demographic dividend and the demographic imperative. So, as we all know, nearly 65% of India's population is below the years of 35 years of age, and the median age is 28. So, over the next 2 decades, India will continue to add significantly to its working population. So, this demography it creates a possibility, and education will determine whether the possibility will translate into productivity or into a disaster. So it's whether a demographic dividend or a demographic disaster. So it's very, very imperative that we focus on this aspect of spending. And further, if you look at, say, the ASER surveys, they continue to, show a very troubling picture. They show persistent deficits in foundational literacy and numeracy. And there's a substantial percentage of grade 5 students who struggle with reading grade 2 material. So that's a very major concern. It's not and it's not merely an academic concern. It's an economic one, right? And therefore we need more investment in stronger foundational learning. And at the same point of time, when we talk about higher education, research, and innovation, India currently has around 1,000 universities. It has 40,000 colleges, and despite all of this, the gross enrollment ratio in higher education it's around 28 to 29%. But our aim is 50% by 2035. So again, investment is needed, right? And at the same point of time, if we look at our expenditure in research and development, it's around 0.7% of the GDP, which is significantly lower as compared to other global innovation leaders. So this is a major structural constraint that we have to look into. Then moving on, we also have to focus on the fact that education's returns, it goes beyond the education metrics. So if we have higher educational attainment, it will correlate with improved public health outcomes. It will correlate with lower, incidence of poverty. It will lead to greater female workforce participation. Going beyond the economic metrics, there are a lot of other things like, you'll have lower poverty, you'll have reduced crime rates, so you'll better law and order, you'll have stronger democratic engagement, as I mentioned earlier. So it's important to understand that if we educate a child, it transforms a household. And if we educate a generation, it will transform a nation. And, in our ancient Indic thought, knowledge was understood as Shakti, as strength. And as we can see, modern economies like America and in countries like Europe, they validate this very thought. So are we moving towards the 6%, spending? I believe that we are moving incrementally, but not decisively. So the allocations are rising in absolute terms. It's also important that they rise in imperative terms because we stand at a very rare civilizational juncture. We all are young, we all are ambitious, we all are globally visible. And hopefully by 2047, when our nation completes 100 years of independence, we become a Viksit Bharat, a developed nation. And imperative to that is increasing the relative spending on education as compared to the GDP. So thank you so much. And I look forward to hearing the thoughts of the moderator as well. Thank you.
It was great hearing from you, Abhinandan. You had well-researched views on this topic, very vocabulary enriched with the economic and the commerce and all finance terms. It was really great. I hope you have a good day.